truly impressive products together. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next exciting videos. On top of that, I'll also be reusing some broken LED bulbs. Next, let's test these two LED bulbs. I plugged the first one into the socket, and it lights up right away, so it's still working fine. Now, let's try the second one. I connect it to the socket, but nothing happens. It stays completely dark. I give it a little shake and notice a faint rattling sound inside, which usually means some parts are loose or damaged. So instead of throwing this broken bulb away, I'm going to repurpose it for a DIY project. Even though it no longer works as a light source, its outer shell and components can still be transformed into something creative and useful. Let's take it apart carefully and see what we can make out of it. First, I carefully remove the plastic cap from the LED bulb. With a little pressure, the cover pops off, revealing a small circuit board and a cluster of tiny LED chips inside. I gently separate the components, making sure not to damage the outer shell, because that's the part I'll be reusing for my DIY project. Now, I move on to drilling into the base and the outer shell of the bulb. I carefully drill a small hole through the metal base, just large enough to pass a wire or a small rod through later. Then, I make another hole on the side of the bulb's plastic shell. Here I have a few old batteries, and I'm going to reuse them for my creative project. Instead of throwing it away, I'm going to repurpose the inner core of the battery and turn it into a soldering tip, a clever way to give new life to old materials. Instead of throwing them away, these old batteries can actually be reused to create all kinds of things. With a bit of creativity, they can become part of small DIY gadgets, decorative pieces, or even power simple projects that give them a second life. Now, let's take one of these old batteries apart to see what's inside. I carefully peel off the outer metal casing. Then remove the protective layer. Inside, there's a core made of tightly packed materials that can be reused in different ways for DIY projects. By handling it gently, I can extract the useful parts without damaging them. When doing this, it's important to be cautious. Avoid touching any leaky material and always work in a well-ventilated area. Once the casing is removed, I'll trim and shape the core. It's a great way to recycle and repurpose parts that would otherwise go to waste. Next, I'll grind the battery core to shape it into a fine tip. Now that it's been ground in the right shape, and just like that, we've turned it into a working soldering tip. Next, I move on to working with the tire. First, I cut out the valve section and set aside. Then, I carefully trim away the excess rubber around it to get a clean, separate piece. This way, I'll have a neat valve part that can be reused, while the rest of the tire rubber will be prepared for other creative uses. Now, let's make use of the valve piece. Even though it's just a small part of the tire, it can actually be repurposed in creative ways. To clean the valve, I spray a bit of WD-40 onto it. The solution quickly loosens up any dirt, grease, or rust stuck on the surface. After wiping it down with cloth, the valve looks much cleaner and ready to be reused in my DIY project. After finishing all the preparations, it's time for the assembly step. I take the clean valve and attach it firmly to the base of the light bulb. With a bit of adjustment, the valve fits securely into place, turning the bulb base into a sturdy connector. Next, I thread an electrical wire through the opening. The wire passes smoothly from the bulb's base through the valve, creating a neat channel that will make it easier to connect everything later on. Now I take the battery core and attach it to the valve section. Once secured in place, the valve acts like a holder, while the battery core becomes a power source. Combined together with the wire, this setup can be transformed into a simple DIY welding tool. It won't be as strong as a professional welder, but it's enough for experimenting with small joints and creative projects. To complete the wiring, I'll attach an alligator clip to the other end. It makes a connection quick, secure, and easy to detach when needed. I'll add another wire to connect with the negative terminal. This will complete the circuit and allow current to flow properly to the soldering tip. For this wire, I'll attach alligator clips to both ends. That way, it's easy to connect and disconnect from both the power source and the device. For the power source, I'll be using a standard motorcycle battery. It's a 12V lead-acid battery, powerful enough to heat up the soldering tip and stable for small electronics work. This type of battery is easy to find, rechargeable, and delivers consistent current, which makes it perfect for our DIY soldering project. To test out this DIY welding setup, I start with two razor blades. I position them edge to edge, then bring the tip of the wire connected to the battery core right to the joint. As the current flows, tiny sparks appear and the metal begins to fuse together. Slowly, the edges of the blades start bonding, showing that this improvised welder can actually work on small pieces of metal. After a short while, the welding is complete. The two razor blades are now firmly joined at the edge where the sparks fuse and metal together. The joint isn't perfectly smooth like professional weld, but it holds tightly enough to prove that this DIY setup can actually bond metal pieces. It's a small but exciting success for this homemade welding experiment. Next, I move on to soldering a piece of wire with tin. I strip off a bit of the insulation to expose the copper core, then bring the wire close to the heated tip. As soon as I touch the solder, it melts and flows smoothly over copper strands, coating them in a shiny layer of tin. This creates a stronger, more reliable connection for future use. Now, I test it further by applying solder directly onto the circuit board inside the bulb I opened earlier. As the tip touches the metal pads, the solder melts and spreads evenly across the surface. It bonds well with the tiny copper traces, showing that this DIY welder is capable not only of fusing larger pieces of metal, but also of handling small, delicate electronic parts. This experiment shows how a few discarded items, an old LED bulb, some used batteries, and a tire valve, can be transformed into a simple DIY welding tool. With it, I was able to fuse two razor blades, solder a wire with tin, and even test on the circuit board inside the bulb. Although it doesn't match the power and precision of professional equipment, it proves that we create